baking with you. I fed my sourdough starter last night. Here she is. Actually, it's not a she, it's a he. This is Nigel. And last night at around 8 p.m., I put 50 grams of cold, dormant starter from my fridge. So here's my fridge jar. This is the jar that lives in the fridge all the time. I took 50 grams out of this jar, put it in my big, clean quart jar, and then I fed it 200 grams of water, stirred that up, 200 grams of flour, and it has been on the counter all night. It's getting cooler in our house, so I would say that it actually does rise a little bit slower, which you'll see as your temperature changes in your house with the climate and as you go through different seasons. You'll notice that your starter is rising slower, your bread rises slower. That's normal. There's nothing wrong with it. So fed that, and today what we're going to do is we are going to talk about why your dough would be sticky when you mix it up, what to do if your dough is sticky, and all the reasons why it's really good to figure that out, get the ratios right, because when your dough is the right consistency, which I would say just takes practice to get there, to know what you want it to feel like. If there's a sourdough baker near you that you can go and like bake together, it's so good to see what their dough looks like and feels like and how sticky is it. So that's why I love showing you what ours looks like. Now, here's the thing though, you have to remember every kitchen climate is different. So when I give you our ratios, which we're gonna make sure these are all down in the description once the video is over. But here's the ratios. If you wanna write these down, this is what we're gonna be putting into our bowl as we mix it up. And as we mix it up, we're gonna be talking about the different reasons basically, what does stickiness in your dough create when you go to bake your bread? We're gonna talk about that. But here's what you need for this recipe. You need 300 grams of active fed starter, or leaven. So if you see leaven in a recipe, what that means is they are wanting you to use an active fed starter like this, okay? Then you need 600 grams of water, and I'm just using like tap water. We have really nice clean water here where we are. It doesn't have tons of chlorine or chemicals and all that stuff in it. If you don't like the taste of your water, use bottled water. That's fine. But I'm gonna tell you, if you haven't baked with me yet, I'm not super picky about all the rules because I'd rather you start baking than be stopped because you're like, oh my word, my water is not perfect. Just bake, okay? Okay, then you're gonna need 900 grams of flour. Because this recipe that I'm giving you is what my sourdough guru taught me, and she always uses this flour. It's an organic, unbleached, all-purpose flour, and we can buy it in bulk from our local like big bulk place called Costco. If you don't have a Costco near you, it might be Sam's Club. But basically, I want you to hear me say, you can use all-purpose flour for this recipe. But here's a little trick for you to start. If you are finding that your dough is consistently too sticky, then I want to encourage you to switch over to bread flour and give that a try. Bread flour has a little bit more protein in it, which basically means your starter has more food to eat, which turns into a richer dough that isn't as sticky. And that's the same if you were wanting to use like fresh milled flour, if you wanted to use whole grain, rye, whole wheat. Every time you get up in, like when you go up into those like richer, heartier flours, the water that you need in your recipe starts to change a little bit. So for today, what we're doing is 300 grams of starter, 600 grams of water, 900 grams of all-purpose flour. Okay, let's see, what kind of questions are you having? Oh, Robin, I'm so glad. She said that this baking method changed her fresh bread life. I love it. Oh, and she made the homemade pizza. Yay! Oh, yes. Some of you just got up. Okay, I have to show you. Did you see my shirt? Wake and Bake. Isn't this the best shirt? I'm gonna put the link to this shirt down below. We found this company They are amazing. They're called Saucetown, and they have all sorts of really cool shirts that are all inspired by like good food. And when you purchase from our link, which I'll put down there when we're done, we get a kickback. So yay, you're helping us. But also the company that makes these shirts also donates a portion. I think it's $1 per shirt that goes back to Atlas Free. If you've watched any of our videos, you might have seen us talk about the fact that we donate from all of our proceeds back to this organization. It's called Atlas Free. They fight human trafficking all over the world. They're doing such good work to give freedom. And so you're baking, your t-shirt wearing, you can help too. So you'll have to go click onto that. Oh, I love, some of you already got one of these shirts. They're so nice. Another reason why I love them is they're made in the USA, and they're just super comfortable and like sturdy. They're not like thin, gonna get a hole in it right away. Okay, let's start mixing up our dough. Number one, you need your scale. I know lots of people love to leave comments that grandma didn't use a scale. Well, goodness, I would love to bake with your grandma. I bet she baked so much that she just knew how much to add in, which is basically where we're getting. We're gonna work our way up there. And when I am a grandma someday, maybe I won't need a scale. But until then, I have my scale, I turn it on, and I put my bowl on the scale. And I'll put links to all of this stuff down in the description below when this video is concluded. Here's the thing, make sure that you look at your scale and you make sure that it says G or grams. That's what we're working with today, is grams. And the reason why it's so lovely to use a scale instead of a measuring cup is it doesn't, like a measuring cup you can pack down in different ways and you can end up with more flour than you did the time before. When you use a scale, it makes it so that you're like, I know I put in 600 grams of flour because my scale told me so. So when I put my bowl on here, I always hit tare to make sure that it wipes out any weight of your bowl or anything else that's on there. So now my scale says 0 and it says grams, okay? Oh, they're asking about our Subway tiles. Yes. Okay, these are Subway tiles back here. We got them from our local Home Depot, and they are the type of tile that has a, oh, my husband's not here for me to ask him the question. Basically, it has a little bump on the side so that you don't have to use a spacer. You set the tiles right next to each other, so you get a really nice thin grout line and you don't have to use any spacers. I don't know what that's called. I'm not a home improvement whiz, but we did pick this out. And if you've seen the other pictures of our kitchen, you can see over here, my husband Aaron did an amazing job. We have a whole tile wall, but don't get me distracted because I'm here to bake with you, okay? Okay, so our bowl is on our scale. First thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna take our starter. Now, if you are having issues getting your starter to wake up, it's not rising like it should have doubled in size, you can do a float test, which, let me get a little cup of water here. The float test is not a, it doesn't work 100% of the time because sometimes it can change depending on the flour that you use, but this is a really good gauge. If you take a little bit of your starter out, plop it in water, it should float. And I haven't done this float test with like rye flour, so I'm not sure if like the heavier ones would go deeper in the water, but you see how it's floating in there? What that tells you is there's a lot of air bubbles and pockets in here because as your starter has worked its way through all of that food, it's putting off gas, which is helping it rise, which is what helps your bread rise. So when your starter is bubbly and happy, like do you see all those bubbles? This is the best sign that you're like, oh my goodness, it has doubled in size since I fed it last night. It's ready to go. Now there is more than 300 grams of starter in my jar. So I'm gonna just pour out that 300 grams. You can see it's kind of thick, which is good. We want it like that. And now I'm not going to ditch anything that is left in this jar. I was debating if I was gonna have time today to bake anything else with it. But as soon as I get to 300, we're almost there. Okay, you have your 300 grams in your bowl. Now you see in here there is so much left over. If you see on a recipe and they say to use discard or active discard, that is what this would be. And I don't know who decided that we should use all these different words because I know that it's confusing. But whatever you have left, when you feed your starter, it rises, you take out what you need to make your recipe, whatever is left is called discard. Don't throw it away though. This is ready to bake. You could make a batch of our sourdough pancakes or waffles or our sourdough rolls. Oh my goodness, they are so good, and they are like, you can mix them up and make them the same day. But if you're like, I don't have time to make something else right now, all of this, which I'm gonna decide, I haven't decided yet what I have time for today. Remember my jar that lives in the fridge? All of this discard, whatever I'm not gonna use, I'm gonna put in here. I'm gonna mix it up together. It goes together. I know people say there's a lot of rules that I'm gonna break. So go ahead, you can tell me if I'm breaking all the rules. I love breaking rules. I always put my discard in with my mother's starter jar. That's how this continues to grow. It's how it continues to stay alive. It's how I never run out of starter. Now, if you are consistently getting too much discard, you consistently have too much, then that's gonna be a different video about making sure that you're only feeding really close to what you need so that you aren't wasting flour, and you don't wanna always have like big, huge jar fulls of extra, okay? That's not the goal, but don't worry about that too much right now. If you have anything extra in your jar, put it in here with your starter. Oh yeah, Judy said she made the snickerdoodles with you use sourdough discard. So good. It makes them like extra snickerdoodly. They're really good. We'll put that link down below too. Okay, I have my starter in my bowl. I'm gonna tare my scale because it's so helpful if you tare it in between every ingredient. You never have to add anything. I'm not against math, but I do get distracted sometimes, and then I think, wait, how much did I add in? So the next thing that I like to add in is the water, and we're gonna do 600 grams of water. The reason why I like to do the water next is because I like to get the starter mixed in with the water so that you don't have as many big clumps when you're going to mix in the flour. And I'm gonna need a little bit more water. Okay, this is just room temperature. I don't like to use hot water or warm water at this point because my goal is not that my bread is rising really fast right now. And we'll chat about it in just a little bit, but okay, I'm not gonna stir on my scale. We don't wanna mess up any calibration on our scale. I'm using my Danish dough whisk. If you don't have one of these yet, the link is going to be below. You need to get one. They are so much better to mix your bread up with because it's unlike like a normal ball whisk where everything kind of gets stuck into it. The Danish dough whisk, look at, nothing even gets stuck to it. Just a little tiny bit of that starter on there. So I'm just making sure that that starter is mixed up in there. And then back onto our scale it goes. And I'm gonna tare my scale out so that I don't have to worry about adding anything. And now comes our flour. And this is one of the best parts about using a scale is, look it, you can just pour your flour in. You don't have to measure and be like, oh my word, did I do 4 cups or 5 cups, 6 cups or 7 cups? So I'm pouring until I get to 900. And this batch of dough is gonna give you enough dough to make 2 800-gram loaves. And it's very hard to talk and pay attention to the numbers. I'm almost there. I'm almost at 900. There we go. Okay, we're at 900. Now, this is the part that we are going to chat about. What do we do if your dough is just coming out too sticky? First thing I want you to think about is, what is the temperature like where you live? If you live somewhere really warm and humid, like you live in Florida, you are probably going to need to use a little bit more flour, or you can go the other way and use a little bit less water, because your kitchen climate is just going to be much, much more humid than if you're living high up in Colorado, or even here. We're near Seattle, and even though, yes, it does rain here, it's not humid. And so the humidity, the warmth changes the way that your dough reacts. So be prepared as you go through like a full year of baking. You'll start to notice, you're like, oh my goodness, it's warmer outside today and my starter rose so fast. And so you'll know like, oh, when it's in the winter months, like pretty soon we'll be having a wood fire in our fireplace, and I will go and put my starter by that so that it will like wake up, because the cold slows it down. It's why putting your starter in the fridge slows the starter down. It makes it go dormant and it makes it kind of pause. So that's one thing to think about. Now, if you have made our everyday dough recipe before and you're like, mine was just so sticky, I want you to add 50 grams more flour into it right now. While you're mixing this up, add 50 grams more in. Now you'll see, I'm just going to mix this up until all of the flour is, there's like basically no more flour sitting down in the bottom, but the dough is gonna look really stringy. I'll bring it closer to the video here in 1 second. It's gonna look stringy. It's gonna look like you still need to mix it up. Okay, can you see this? How it doesn't look smooth at all. It's very lumpy and clumpy, and that's exactly where we wanna stop. One of the things that can make your dough overly sticky is mixing it too much, which I know is crazy, because especially if you're used to making like yeasted bread or anything like that, that type of a dough needs you to knead it, and you're like working the yeast in and you're working all those ingredients in, because it is going to rise really fast and you're going to bake it that same day. Sourdough isn't like that. Sourdough actually does better if you allow the sourdough to do the work. So I give you permission, let the sourdough do the work. So here's my dough. It just looks lumpy and clumpy, and like you should still be mixing it. Don't mix it anymore. It will make it too sticky, because basically it overworks the gluten and it makes it get sticky, makes your bread dense, it makes it not rise as well, so don't overmix it, okay? Now, the next thing that we're gonna do that also will really help with the texture and the stickiness of your bread, put your bowl back on your scale, tear it out. Let me rinse my finger off real quick. And our cat wants in. 1 minute. Come on, kitty. Hi. Okay. Now, here's the other thing. Don't add your salt yet. Well, I say that, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna add it on top. But right now, what we want our dough to do, it's just the starter, water, and flour, and we want it to rest together, and it's gonna give the starter time to start working through and start gobbling up all that flour. It's also gonna give the flour time to fully get hydrated. So this isn't the point. Like if this is the first time you've ever done this recipe, don't worry right now if you're like, oh, it does look a little bit sticky. It changes as the flour has time to hydrate. But if you mix your salt in first, like if we had already mixed it in, the salt actually inhibits the flour. It slows the flour way down from absorbing the moisture. So if you have been adding your salt with that initial mix, change this one thing and let's see what your dough is like. Because when you give your flour time to hydrate for 30 minutes, 40 minutes before we do that first stretch and fold, it completely changes the texture and the moisture level in your dough. But here's what I like to do, and this is another thing that my sourdough guru taught me to do, and it's helpful because you won't forget your salt. It's also helpful because what we're gonna do is we're just gonna add the salt over the top, and it's just gonna sit on the top, and it will collect a little bit of moisture. You'll see after 30 minutes, it looks a little bit moist. That's great. It's starting to break the salt down, but it's not stopping the flour in your dough from getting hydrated. Then after 30 minutes, as it is like resting, so it's gonna rest for 30 minutes before our first stretch and fold. When we go to do that, we're gonna push that salt down into the dough, and we're gonna do multiple stretch and folds, a few more than we'll do later. Okay, what happens if you forgot the salt? Well, your bread is, okay, it's not gonna taste as good because it's not very much salt that you're putting in. Like for this one, we're gonna put in, and I'm gonna do this right now before I forget so it can start resting. So my scale is still at grams. I tared it out and I just shake the salt over the top, and we're gonna do 22 grams. Salt is not all the same. So if you're using just a regular table salt, I would probably just do 20 grams. And some of the coarser salts are a little bit flakier. So, you know, you can play with it, but you need salt. If you do not have any salt in your bread, it will probably be, it has a tendency to basically overproof, which would make it even more flat and dense. The smallest amount of salt in your bread is what allows you to actually taste it. When there's no salt, the flavor is very flat as well. So let's say that you got to, like, what if you got to the very end of the stretch and fold and you had forgotten the salt? I would sprinkle the salt. Let's see, what would I do? If I got to the last stretch and fold and I had forgotten the salt, I would probably measure the salt out in a separate bowl, and I would sprinkle part of it on, do a couple stretch and folds, sprinkle it on, and basically be like mixing it in with one more stretch and fold, then let it rest in the fridge overnight. So let me grab a towel. Because I want to just cover this, and this is going to rest. And here's the cool thing about sourdough is that, yes, it takes some time in between the different steps, but the steps themselves are not very laborious or time consuming. It's really the like waiting in between. And this is where the magic happens with the sourdough, because what it's doing is that starter is working its way through all of that flour and it's gobbling it up. So here's some of the things, and I wrote this down so I don't forget. If your dough is too sticky, it will be very hard for you to shape your loaf and to create any tension. Without shaping and tension, you're going to have a flat loaf that is a little bit more dense and it can be gummy. So if that's the result that you've been getting, you've been baking loaves and they've been coming out flat, dense, gummy, and you're like, oh my word, it's just not working. I want you to add more flour into your recipe and just start with 50 grams. This is the same concept as like if you make cookies and let's say you bake, like I always do a test cookie because you want to see how your batch of cookie dough bakes up. If you bake your test cookie, and it's really, really flat, that tells you that your dough needs more flour because it gives it more structure. And that's the same thing that's essentially happening with your sourdough. Now there's other things that could be going on that would cause your dough to be dense, sticky, gummy. And some of that could be back to your starter, back to this, that maybe your starter needs to be stronger. It could just be that the recipe you're using doesn't work for your kitchen climate. And so I give you permission to play with it, to mess around with it. And this is where it's so helpful to have friends locally that bake, because even if you just hop on to like a Facebook group for your area and say, okay, who bakes sourdough around here, and ask them what are the recipe ratios that they've had the best success with, because your elevation and your climate changes the way that these ratios react to each other. So ask local friends what they do, okay? And then, okay, we talked about not over mixing, talked about types of flour. That's the next thing. So when you change anything about your recipe, you want to change one thing at a time so that you can see, did it actually do anything? And this is where continuing to bake does truly reap the best reward, and it becomes the practice. The practice of it helps you understand the process a little bit better, but it also, as you're continuing to bake, you are strengthening your starter because you're feeding it more. You're giving it more consistent fed starter into that like main one that's in your fridge, which strengthens it. And then the more that you're baking, it also helps you to see, okay, did that work? When I added just 50 grams more of flour, did it change the way that my loaf baked up? And if you're seeing that it's like helping it get fluffier and it's rising better, then add 75 grams the next time. If you do add that extra flour and you're like, gosh, I just didn't really notice much of a difference, that's when I want you to switch to bread flour. And I've found a really great bread flour from King Arthur. There's a really great bread flour in our bulk section at our local Winco. So don't get caught up that you have to go spend crazy amounts of money on like really high-end flour. It's okay to go to your bulk section and just get what you need and test it out. When you switch to bread flour though, I want you to use the exact same recipe that I gave you. That 300 grams of starter, 600 grams of water, 900 grams of flour, and start with that, okay? Now, here's the thing. Okay, wait, there's a question here. I forgot to cut my last 2 loaves from the bulk mixer. The bread came out dense, but it tasted good. Okay, that's good. Oh, I love it. She made like croutons with it. Way to go, Samantha. Yeah, don't ditch your bread. If it doesn't turn out quite right, make croutons. Croutons are the savior of a bad loaf. Okay, so when we hit the 30-minute mark, let's just talk through the next steps. And we'll put a link to a video below that you can go and you can walk through all of the steps with me. We'll put a link to a video below that shows you how I take the dough out of the fridge and I shape a loaf. So this is gonna rest. We probably have another 20 minutes, and then I'm going to push the salt down into the dough, and I'm gonna do stretch and folds around the bowl, and I go around the bowl 2 times-ish. I basically go around the bowl more for this very first stretch and fold because I want to make sure that all of the salt has gotten into the dough. Then the dough is gonna rest for another 30 to 40 minutes, and I'm gonna do a second stretch and fold, then a third, and then a fourth. So the day that I do any kind of mixing of the dough is a day that I'm home, but I'm like gonna go hop onto the computer, answer emails. So I'm not necessarily in the kitchen baking all day. I am simply just getting the dough going. And a lot of days I get multiple different doughs ready. So I'll do our everyday dough, I'll do our pizza dough. Sometimes if I have extra starter, like maybe I'll make one of the pumpkin loaves or some other kind of dough on the same day because you're already in the kitchen. So getting 3 bowls ready and doing 3 bowls of stretch and fold doesn't take hardly any more time, but you've just set yourself up for like the most delicious couple of weeks. So then once we finish our final stretch and fold, this dough is gonna go into my big container. We'll put the link to this down below too. And this is just the 6-quart one. This amount of dough is going to start off kind of at 3 quarts and it's going to rise in the fridge, but it's gonna be really slow. I don't do any bulk fermenting on the counter because I would forget about it. It has a chance of overproofing, and I just prefer cold proofing. It gives you better flavor, better rise, better texture, and it can stay in the fridge for days before you bake with the dough. Then when it's time to bake with the dough, I cut out and I use my scale and I pull out 800 grams of dough at a time. And that's what I use to make our like rustic oval or round loaves. And I shape it cold, and then it proofs on the counter for only 1 hour. You don't want it or need it to be sitting on the counter for a really long time. That's when it has that chance to start overproofing. And once your dough overproofs, honestly, at that point, the best thing you can do, and you'll know your dough has overproofed if it's really flopsy and basically you saw it get real fluffy in here, and then now it's just like really flat and sad. If it's like that, make a thin crust pizza, make focaccia bread, do something where the dough doesn't need to rise very much. But what I have found with this recipe, and here in our kitchen and climate, is I can actually leave this dough in the fridge for at least 10 days, sometimes longer. It just depends on how hot it is outside. Now, if you are wanting your dough to last that long in the fridge, you actually want it to be really stiff before you put it in the fridge, because the stiffer that your dough is, the longer it can proof before it overproofs. So that's one of the questions that we've gotten is, okay, my first loaf on day 2 from the fridge was great. My second loaf on day 6 was flatter and stickier. So what that means is in your kitchen climate and in your fridge, the dough had gotten to the point that it was starting to overproof by day 6. So either bake all of your dough before you get to day 6, or add 50 to 75 grams more flour in on this initial mixing, and that will allow your dough to proof in the fridge for even longer, which is great because now, like, I don't have time and I don't actually need any bread today because we're gonna do sushi bowls. But in a couple days, I do want to have a fresh loaf of bread, and I'm gonna get the pizza dough mixed up either tonight or I don't know, maybe tomorrow. But then the pizza dough will be ready and we'll have pizza this weekend, and I won't have to do any of that mixing then. Okay, there's another question from Mandy. Your loaf came out gummy near the bottom, but it wasn't flat. Okay, that's good. The second loaf, tried the method of keeping it in the fridge after shaping, and it was better, but still a bit gummy. Was it underproofed? It could be that, so this is the crazy thing with sourdough, is that you're like, okay, how long had it sat in the fridge? I would want to know that, Mandy, like how long had your dough been in the fridge before you worked with it? Also, did you proof, like when you preheated, when you preheated your oven, did you preheat your Dutch oven in there with it? Make sure you do that, because you want the bread, once it is going into the oven, you want it to be in this like fully hot space that is like trapping all the moisture in. Because every oven cooks different, maybe try putting your rack down lower, because it's actually interesting that the bottom of it would be gummier. Also, Mandy, when you went to go take it out of the oven, did you take the temperature? Like, was it hitting 200 degrees in the middle of the loaf? Taking the temperature of the loaf is so good, because sometimes it can look done on the outside and it's not finished on the inside. And so use the thermometer to take the temperature. Okay, Mandy says that the dough is in the fridge overnight for the first loaf. The second loaf was after 3 days, with the Dutch oven in the hot oven for 1 hour, and it's a gas oven. Okay. I can't imagine that it was overproofed. I think that your kitchen climate and just the way that it works in your oven, you might just need a little bit more flour. So since yours wasn't like super gummy all the way through, I would start with just 25 grams of extra flour and see, does that help? Now, the fact that your second loaf was better means that the dough had more time to mature in the fridge by the time you baked that second one. The other thing that Mandy had mentioned, which is, yeah, try doing a little bit more flour, Mandy, and see what that changes. But don't change anything else, because that's the whole thing with like any science experiment. You want to change one thing at a time so that you can see, okay, did that actually help it? Okay, the other thing that you can do, which I think Mandy did this because we were chatting when she was having some issues. Get your dough, shape it, put it in your Banneton basket or your loaf pan, whatever you're gonna bake it in, cover it well, and let it proof in the fridge for several hours or overnight. Then get your oven screaming hot. Your Dutch oven is in there hot. It's all ready for that loaf to bake. And you're gonna take your loaf straight out of the fridge and you're gonna bake it straight from the fridge. There is something about baking sourdough cold from the fridge that actually gives it more spring, more fluff. And so I think it's probably something about the change in the temperature. It starts to release that moisture more. Okay, the other thing to think about, Mandy, is how did you score your loaf? Because when you score your bread and when you do like a big loaf, like any kind of like a oval or a round one, you want to make sure that you have one scoring that is deep. The other one can be like real nice and fancy, whatever you want to design on there. But the reason why you want that deep scoring is because that is like a vent and it's letting all of the moisture escape from your bread. So if you don't have a nice deep cut and it doesn't, okay, I'm gonna tell you this. I don't care if you get this big like ear thing. I don't, like, our family's like, cut it off, it's so hard. That is a sign that your bread is rising really, really well. But you get that ear because your bread rises really well, but it's also the angle of the cut. So if you're like, I don't really care if I get that, don't do a 45-degree cut when you're like slicing down that score. Just do a straighter score and your bread won't open up like that. But make sure you do a really nice score on it, because if there's not a good deep cut, the moisture can't escape from the bread. That moisture starts to get trapped in the bread, and that is what can also cause it to be gummy. It can make, if there's too much moisture trapped in the bread, it can make your crust really thick. And then what happens is all of that moisture from down below still wasn't able to escape out. So make sure you're doing a good score on your bread. Okay, let's see, next question. I tried adding the salt after mixing, but it was still sticky. Next time I'm going to add a bit more flour. Yes, Dragon Cat, start with 50 grams of flour. If you don't notice a difference, then that's when I want you to, in the next batch, to switch over and use bread flour, because it's just gonna give your starter more food to gobble up, which gives it more rise. Okay. So Bev normally does loaf pans. Do you get a better rise in a Dutch oven? It is different. So the loaf pan is giving it shape, and so I really love doing the sandwich loaves, and our family actually, they kind of waver. For a while they'll want sandwich loaves, which I have noticed I do get a pretty good rise, but I don't tend to get as big of air pockets in it. And which is actually kind of better when you are going to have a sandwich, because I don't want a big pocket in it. And then like, how do you put any mayonnaise or anything on it if there's a hole? So I have just noticed that our loaf pan, the texture is a little bit different. It's like a smaller crumb. Is that the right word? Yeah. But some of that is because the loaf pan is baking in the oven without a lid on it. I don't use a lidded loaf pan. Instead, I put a metal baking pan, like a cake pan, in the oven as well, and I fill that metal pan with water. So it's getting a lot of steam in the oven, but some of that changes the way that the loaf bakes. The oval or the round rustic loaves, they do rise different. You should just try it. But as a new baker, the sandwich loaves are, I think, the best thing to start with, because shaping it is way easier and it holds it into that loaf pan. And the bonus is, like, once we are done with all of our stretch and folds with this, I could cut this in half, shape them both up, put them in loaf pans, cover them, let them proof in the fridge overnight, and you can literally take it out of the fridge, do a score, slide it right into the oven. So if you are struggling with, like, how do I have time in my normal everyday life? Because guess what? Like, I work full time. We run our own business. We have 3 kids. 2 of them are still in high school. One just graduated. Like, life is full. I love being in the kitchen and baking and filling our table, but I don't have that much time that I can be in here dealing with it every day. So the loaf pans make that way, way easier. Okay, let's see. Robin's planning on taking the bread dough for to camp. She's gonna take it to camp in the fridge. I won't have baskets for proofing or a Dutch oven or a loaf pan. Can I bake it on a baking sheet? Yes. I'm trying to think of what would be an issue with that. It really, I mean, I suppose it would really just be making sure that you have another pan in the oven with a lot of water. So make sure you have another metal pan that you can fill with water so that your oven has, like, a lot of moisture in there. It would be so awesome though if you could just shape it in loaf pans and bring it in loaf pans and then just bake it like that. But if you don't have loaf pans, then okay. Try it on the baking sheet. Baking sheets are so much thinner on the bottom, so I kind of think maybe you need to, like, double up the baking sheet so that it doesn't burn the bottom. And then just make sure there's tons of water in another pan. And then let us know what happens, because I want to know. Maybe it's like a new method we should all try. Okay, I think it's time for me to hop off of here now, but I'm so glad that you all joined me in the kitchen. We'll be doing another live the beginning of November. So keep the questions coming. All of your questions help us to figure out what we're gonna do next. And stick around. I will put the link below because we're turning it on live this week, but our bread bag tutorial. So if you've been making sourdough and you're wanting to make a bread bag, which let me show you. My mother-in-law made these bread bags for me. They're like a bento style bread bag. You put the loaf in there and then you can just easily, like, tie it like this. They're so cute. We did a whole video to show you exactly how to make it, and the PDF, like, if you are like me and you like to, like, print something out so that you can just go step by step, the video walks you through step by step, and the video is just going to be live on YouTube. You can watch it anytime. The PDF pattern that you can download, print, keep, $4.99 is what it's going to cost. And I think we just got it done right before we started this live, so we'll put the link to that below as well, and the video will be coming live later this week on that. But you can come and make a bread bag with us too, so that's coming up next. Plus we have some really delicious baking because we wanted to show you all. We're gonna break a recipe out of our cookbook. Now this cookbook is all about dinner. There's no sourdough recipes in this book, so I don't want you to buy it and then be like, oh my word, there's no sourdough recipes in there. We wrote this cookbook several years ago, all based about, like, how having people at your table really does change everything. It's so, so good. Like, it's why we're baking, right? We want to share this goodness and have people at our table. We'll put the link to the cookbook down below too, but I got a request from Aaron. I always ask him, like, what have you been wanting this coming season? And he's like, oh, can you please make the toffee cake? Here's the photo of it. It's a spiced toffee cake. It has ginger in it, spices, you bake it, and then you make this, like, caramely sauce, and you poke holes in the cake and you pour it over it and you bake it for a little bit longer. Oh my word, it is divine. It's something that we had when we got to visit Ireland several years ago, and I thought we got to figure out how to make that. So we're gonna break that recipe out of the cookbook and share it with you soon. But you can grab one of the cookbooks. It tells more of our story of how we started hosting dinners here in our orchard, why we support Atlas Free, and how we actually host dinners to raise funds to fight human trafficking. It's been so, so cool. But you can read more about that in here, and it'll be available, I'm gonna just say soon, because it's on my calendar and we're working on it, is we are working on a sourdough ebook that will walk you through step by step how to start your own starter. All of our systems on how we make it really easy, we break all the rules and we still bake really great bread. That ebook is coming. My goal is that it will be live and available before Thanksgiving this year, but sometimes I have lofty goals. We'll see if we get it all done. But okay, Stacy's asking, do we freeze our loaves? Yes. Sometimes I bake it and then we just don't end up having time to eat it, or I just need to bake it because the dough's been in the fridge for a little bit too long. As soon as it's cooled, I wrap it up, I stick it in the freezer, and I'll put a link below to the video of how I crisp it back up. It is so funny that it works, but you let your loaf thaw on the counter and then run it under the water in your sink. Literally, just get the whole thing wet, throw it in the oven, and within like 15 minutes, it will be like you just baked it. So cool. But yeah, freeze your extra loaves. And I'm so glad you all could be here with us. We love having you in the kitchen, and I look forward to being in the kitchen with you again soon. So have a good day baking. And let's see, we probably have like 10 more minutes, and then we're gonna do our first stretch and fold, okay? I'll be stretching and folding too, okay? Have a good day.